There we go. I do make some camera adjustments, and then now my adjustment is going, where's my view go? I'm usually using my other camera. I'm using this camera, but whatever. Welcome to a Saturday. I got the day right. Last time I think it was Saturday. I did it on Sunday, or maybe it was Sunday. I labeled it Saturday. The labeling's correct. It's actually Saturday. And well, I decided we're playing with stuff today. And the other reason for using this camera, and let's see if this works properly. Drag a few things over here. How does this look is going to be the question. Is this viewable? I guess you could say. That's interesting. It's lagging. So I guess, does it lag when I do it this way? Do you see me lagging, or is that just something I see when I'm looking at it? Kind of curious. Anyways, let me drag TrueNAS over here too. Because now you actually be able to see everything on here. Okay, so you see it lagging too. That's weird. I wonder what makes it lag. Because this, oh wow, this is really laggy. Maybe we'll switch back to the other camera. That's interesting because, I mean, I don't see a reason for it to do this, but boy, am I lagging. It's doing it on my screen. So let's switch. Now it's not lagging. All right, now there's one of me. Because from my perspective, there was two of me. So welcome to a less laggy version. I'll move the microphone over a little bit so I don't whack it with my head. Okay, that is strange. I was just trying it on the other system and didn't work. Let me turn off that other camera because now I'm bothered by that. All right. I just don't like leaving cameras on that I don't have any use. Maybe I'm weird like that. Or mostly it's one, I'm weird, and two, I will forget that it's on after the live stream, and I'll come in like the next day to my studio and go, oh, that camera is still on. I actually have a power down sequence that I try to turn everything off when I'm done. Anyways, let's go over here. Well, I would say it's the wrong frame rate, except it was working for a moment and then it didn't. And I didn't change anything other than it broke when I switched back and forth. So it's probably a problem with OBS virtual camera. That's my guess. If you look for my studio tour, I break down all the cameras as I have several and different lenses and things like that. And no, I don't remember the members. I'm not as much of a camera nerd as a lot of people. So I list them all out in my, my videos for things. I mean, that's a Canon Mark II that I'm on now. The other one's a Sony, but I don't remember the model. I have an FX30 as well. Someone asked a question. Yeah, I don't use Unraid. I don't mind if you use Unraid, of course. I'm not someone who has opinions that other people shouldn't use software that I don't use. But yeah, I don't really have a use case for Unraid. I'm much more of a TrueNAS person because TrueNAS has all the performance. Yes, it's definitely, someone can call me out all day on saying TrueNAS is more complicated than Unraid, and I will give you a big thumbs up and a yes, and you should probably be using Unraid. Doesn't mean I'm going to use it, but it's the same thing with a lot of people think Windows is wonderful, and I let them live in that land. I think Windows is awful, so I don't use it. Let's see. Quick rant. So I don't know how to approach this, but maybe I'll reach out to the people. If anyone listens to the Open Source Security Podcast, it's great. Listen to it. And I thought about reaching out to them, and I don't know. I don't like being someone who just complains, but I definitely have, and I just will throw this out here, and this came up with Rust Desk a lot. The number of people that get angry if an open source project has a funding model. People are like, this is not the spirit of open source. I can't believe these developers think they can make money off of this. They have a whole other not open source thing that they're selling to fund the project. That is the most awful thing they could possibly do. It's like, I seen the arguments on Rust Desk and I'm like, really? People trying to build a product, giving the base product away for free, giving an enhancement for management as an upsell. I mean, if you don't like the business model, obviously Rust Desk is not the only company around doing something, but man, the people that seem to be angry at it. And it's funny because the same thing happened with Invoice Ninja. There was, I don't do any videos on it, but I still use Invoice Ninja. I think it's great. If anyone isn't familiar with Invoice Ninja, it's an open source invoicing platform. And yeah, here we go. So they have a free version and they charge for hosting. This is hosting. And in their free version, it looks like they eliminated it, but at one time, if you wanted to do the self-hosted version, they had a $20 a year donation essentially, or I guess it's not really a license. All it did was it removed the little bottom corner that said powered by Invoice Ninja. People were sending pull requests to get rid of that. People were posting in my forums, I can't believe you'd promote a software, Tom, that wants $20. It's not really open source. I'm like, no, all the code's there. Matter of fact, you can go in the code and fix it. So then it caused people to go and do pull requests. I'm like, really? It's that bad to pay $20 to a company developing a free and open source thing? And by the way, all the code, including the little powered by Invoice Ninja, is open source. So I don't know. Sometimes I get aggravated with the open source world. I just wanted to spend a couple minutes ranting about it. It's the ire that comes from much of the community. It's actually not the open source world. Developers, I think they become more nervous when they jump into the open source world because the ire that comes from people who are angry about their free product. But anyways, enough. I'm off of that soapbox. Windows 10 is the last good version of Windows. Win 11 a nightmare. I would say probably Windows XP, in my opinion, was the last good version. And I don't think it was great, but it's been downhill ever since. I mean, Microsoft doesn't have a operating system as much as they have an advertising platform, and they just keep getting worse because of that. Where's the meme I posted because it makes me laugh, and I'll share it with all of you. For those that follow me on LinkedIn, there's plenty of memes. And where'd the other one go? But I was making fun of Microsoft, and there we go. Have to make this one bigger and share it. I had posted this on LinkedIn the other day, though. Let me finish setting up. Me wanting to keep my files offline and organized. But I mean, everything's like an upsell from them constantly. It's just one of those things that kind of drives me crazy. This was the other one I was posting about, because developers will download if you didn't hear, there's tons of extensions that were full of malware essentially, or things that weren't supposed to be there, and developers can't resist loading free custom themes to their VS Code instances. And yeah, that's a problem. I need my free theme. Windows 7 was the best. Okay. I'm with you on this one. I run Synology and TrueNAS. Definitely room for both. What's the best way to use multiple NICs when using Proxmox? Do you make the fastest connection to a bridge, or do you create VMs that are physically tied to one network interface? I don't use Proxmox, so I don't know if bridge is the right answer or not. But I usually make you're on XCP-ng, maybe I'll bond a couple fast interfaces together, or just have one fast interface that I use for storage. Storage is usually what you want fast on. Depends on the application, of course. So run storage on it, run several things on it. If you have an application that needs faster connectivity, then yeah, probably running it on a 10 gig is, if it's a 10 gig, for example, it'd be a good idea. So whatever one's faster, run your things on it. but I don't use Proxmox specifically, so I don't have a more specific answer. TrueNAS on a PowerEdge R430 can recommend a low power backup solution. I have another PowerEdge R420, but want to spend another 103 watts machine doing backup. It's a matter of kind of the DIY, build it yourself. That's the way to do it, to try to find something low power. It's anything that comes in the commercial market mostly is not going to be low powered. You can find a NAS case and find I think it's the N100. You can look for some low powered boards, and they are out there. And the drives themselves don't take up that much power at idle. So, that's at least not too much of the usage on there. So yeah, just finding those. And honestly, I still have a really old, it's not plugged in at the moment, really old TrueNAS box that one of their first gen ones that's got a I think it's a dual process, not dual processor, but just 2-core processor in it. Really low wattage usage, and it's good for backups. It's slow. That's the one downside. There are some disadvantages, but for backups, it probably doesn't matter. I mean, the data will come off when the data comes off. Hopefully you don't need it that fast. Using Backblaze B2 for backups. Awesome. What single board computer would you buy in 2025? It starts with why you're buying one. And the reason Raspberry Pi versus Zima board becomes not really the debate is, why are you buying one? I like Raspberry Pi. I think they're amazing. They do a lot of things. But if the thing you want to run won't run on a Raspberry Pi because it needs x86, then that rules the Pi out. So I always start with why I want to buy something, and yes, then you can figure out which one makes sense. But I mean, a Pi and a Zima are fine. I can run Proxmox. Any hardware, is this true for XCP-ng? Pretty much. I have run XCP-ng and all kinds of weird mini PCs, random old hardware. Yeah, I found excellent compatibility with it. I have not run into too many things it will not run on. Occasionally, and I think this might be true for Proxmox as well, I just don't run into it as much because I don't run Proxmox. You might have to set a BIOS setting. There was like one of the boards that we had an error with, and it could have been fixed now in the newer version of XCP-ng. You had to change something in the IOMMU setting. And if you Googled the error that you got, you immediately landed on the forum post about what to change in a BIOS. And it was specific, and it was an older thing, but for the most part, it runs on whatever hardware. I don't keep up with the Firefox drama, so I have no thoughts on it. Yes, people want free things all the time, regardless of the hard work of the community. Sometimes you have to deal with that. Yeah, I don't think it encourages people to start contributing to open source when you're getting flamed going, I can't believe you're actually, selling hardware for this open source software that you give away. Like, people don't realize how much work goes into software development, and to face the wrath of people who are mad that you have any way to support yourself while developing software that you give to them for free. It's just, I know it's not the whole community. It's just a small number of them that are rather vocal about this. The Rust Desk ones come up because there's been so many comments on Rust Desk for hating the developers. Someone is just going on of how not good the software is compared to commercial products. I'm like, yeah, $100 million company can develop better than a couple people offering an open source one. I'm shocked. I mean, sometimes the opposite is true. Open source developers come up with some really clever stuff that competes great with enterprise software, but that's not always the case. So, well, let's see. We'll love to see if you have any ideas to get WireGuard VPN connection to a router behind Starlink. Even in bridge mode, you don't get a public IP address. Well, that's why I did my CGNAT video with pfSense. And that is a workaround. If you're not using pfSense, then there's probably other ways to do it. But the CGNAT video I did is the solution. I don't have another one, but it uses WireGuard. But I showed WireGuard from the command line, and people seemed upset because I should have showed the WireGuard Easy Builder tool. I mean, yes, if you find tools that make things easier, but I was teaching people how to do it, not how to do it with a third-party tool that makes it easier. Nothing wrong with using a tool that makes things easier. I mean, but yeah, there are other ways to do it. And there's another one called, I haven't tried it. I think it's called Pangolin. my friend DB Tech, he's got a YouTube channel. He's done a video on that tool as well. And of course, Cloudflare tunnels, really popular for a lot of people that want things externally accessible. What do I run besides Proxmox? I'm a big fan of XCP-ng. This is the software of choice for me. Actually, I'm doing some migrations right now. But yeah, this is where all my VMs live. Matter of fact, let me make sure they're all attached right now. I'm doing some migrations as we speak, playing with a few things. So let me connect both my labs. Well, technically, yeah, several labs I have, but this is what the interface looks like. I've done tons of videos in XCP-ng. It definitely works great. XCP-ng is going to be the answer. Yes. Hey, Tom, been a follower since before I started my business in 2019. Great content. Keep it up. I saw Rustdesk video. Going to give it a try. Yeah, I don't know that Rustdesk is ready for production, but it works. I mean, for the use cases I have for it, it seems to be fine. Open source model, having a business model is a good thing, necessary to keep it going. I 100% agree with that. How hard is the transition of Proxmox XCP-ng? Well, there's no direct way to move, no easy direct way to move the files, but if you use a tool to clone it, like Clonezilla, works great. Backup and restore, if you're using like third party, I don't know if you could do a Proxmox backup server into XCP-ng. I'm not really sure if that would work. I don't use Proxmox backup server, but if you have a backup process, you could backup and restore. But Clonezilla works fine for a lot of Linux VMs. Although support more open source projects, but very few, very poor people like me, it's either buy expensive hardware or expensive pro versions. Hey, Tom, we're all waiting for you to release UniFi videos the same day as all of us do. Nah, not likely. Thoughts on Harvester? You know, it looks neat. I don't know anyone really using it, so I don't know how well tested it is. But I don't have an interest in it. It doesn't offer any features. Matter of fact, it has way less features than Proxmox and XCP-ng. It's one of those. I don't have it doesn't have a feature that compels me because it's feels lesser than the other. But I mean, if you want to use it, I don't know any reason not to use it. I do know it seems to, if I'm not mistaken, lean into being like Kubernetes and stuff like that. So hold on. All right. Make sure the phone's muted. How do you decide what open source project support financially? Should you still support it if you try to stop using it a few months, or only support a project to use long term? It's a personal decision. There's not any hard fast rules, but if I'm using a project I find value of, I will donate to it. Have you ever made a video on hardening a VPS besides? No, I mean, I don't think I've made any specific videos on that, but following any of the million guidelines out there for hardening of Linux will, get you where you need to be. There's a ton of guidelines out there. There's some pretty well prescripted ways you should set it up, like, don't open any ports except for what's necessary. Make sure if you are opening SSH, it's key only, but also you shouldn't be opening SSH to the public. You should set a firewall rule so you can only manage it from a certain point. So it's not there. That's not something I don't know if I'll do a video on that or not. I don't set up a ton of VPSs every day either. I've never seen Harvester in the corporate market. I mostly work in the corporate market, not the Homelab market. So that's, I mean, my guess would be it's popular in Europe and not popular here in the US. And I work mostly in US markets. So yeah, that's my assumption as to where it's got some popularity. I recently started building a Homelab. I have considered pfSense and Ubiquiti firewall options. You recently did post a mention after switching. We'd love to know your thoughts. It comes down to use case, and that's why I did that video. The use case, because software is a moving target. The fact that Ubiquiti has the features I need for the system I was replacing, I can use it. But it does not have features I need for every situation. For example, I have many pfSense deployed because Ubiquiti has features that they're not available. The way you manage VPN servers is very different between them. If you have a need for the way pfSense does it and not the way Ubiquiti does it, then that's not a fit for you. So it's not a matter of product A, product B. It's what is your use case, and then that should drive the product you use. Is there a way to run a backup to an external hard drive from XCP-ng? I have a new lab server coming. I need to repurpose the current drives. There's a hacky way to do it. I'll actually show this. If you're doing backups, and we'll go to settings, remotes, and we'll go set up a new remote. There we go. You can point this to a local path on your system. So could you do it? It's hacky, but yeah, you'd have to pass through a local path to your XO system, and then you could do it. It's a solution that you could make work. You've got a UCG Max this week. Awesome. Loving it so far. You migrated from OpenSense. Congratulations, and awesome. Glad you're happy with it. I have an issue regarding a large number of DPX image files in the same folder on a TrueNAS SMB share. It starts as fast as I would expect for the pool, but after a while becomes slower and slower. A couple things. One, I don't know what DPX files are. I could probably Google that. But generally speaking, there's a couple things that make your TrueNAS faster is you can get special metadata VDEVs, so it can read the metadata faster. That is what they're for. They're definitely going to be helpful if the situation is indexing lots of small files. Wendell did a great video from Level 1 Techs on there. So if you type in like special VDEV Level 1 Tech, you'll land on that video. He explains the special metadata VDEVs, and like the name implies, for special metadata, it helps index large volumes of files. And the other thing that's going to help is, of course, fast drives and having plenty of memory for all that data to exist. The TrueNAS system I have, let me pull that up real quick. Well, this is one of my lab ones. We'll switch to this. You can see it has a 124 gigs of RAM, and it's all being used for ZFS cache. So yeah, I'll make it bigger. There we go. That's a lot of cache, but that's where the performance comes from, is caching. That's one of the huge advantages of ZFS. There's people who will argue ZFS is memory hungry, and I'm like, that's not exactly how I would describe ZFS. It is memory efficient. It takes the memory that is not being used and caches data there. Did SUSE develop or acquire Harvester? I wasn't sure. I thought SUSE was a developer, not the acquirer. So SUSE developed Harvester, allegedly. Where is the? Pull up the page on this. Harvester is now production ready and generally available, and this is on them. This year, SUSE made a commitment to our customers and helped them build blah, blah, blah. Harvester is 100% open source, free to use, modern hyper-converged infrastructure solution. So yeah, SUSE built it. That's what I thought the answer was. You watched an older stream from last week. Are you still doing the Jitsi Meet? I'm not doing it today, but yes, I do plan to do more of those. It's not on today's to-do list. I don't have a schedule for when I'll do the after hours meet, but we're working on it, so I have a cadence to it. It was definitely fun meeting a lot of people. I want to learn about firewall security and network routing. I think pfSense will be far better for learning ubiquity, and I wonder if I'm correct about this. Oh yeah, you definitely have more knobs you can turn and more things you can tinker with inside of the pfSense system. So from I want to learn security standpoint and deeply understand state tables and firewall rules, absolutely, there's a lot you can learn with pfSense on there. That's one of the things I really like about pfSense is the fact that they just, through the web interface, give you an absolute plethora of information. So it can really help you grasp all the firewall rules. Having a little trouble with words today. Is there such thing as an SMB share performance tool? I forget the tool that is super popular for dry. I mean, FIO, if you're using Linux, yeah, that's an easy one. Oh, that's right, Crystal Disk. So CRISTAL. Is it Crystal Disk Mark, I think? Crystal Disk Mark. So that is the another tool and there's a couple other ones out there for Windows. Most of the time when people talk about SMB performance testing, they're talking about Windows. The other one, and this is something I was playing with today, because I'll be doing some benchmarks, is Phoronix Test Suite. Phoronix Test Suite's been around for a while, and it's definitely great for doing any type of testing. You can play with it to get more specific in the testing to be able to do like testing of SMB. By default, it's not specifically made to test SMB, but it does have testing facilities for FIO. And if you pointed it to an SMB share that it would run on, technically it's testing SMB at that point. So Phoronix Test Suite is kind of my go-to for a lot of testing. Would love a detailed tutorial on how to configure things in Nextcloud. Finding info and settings are glossed over, not explaining. Missing, very out of date. Yeah. Well, first off is really, I really wouldn't recommend running it on TrueNAS. That has been like a broken mess for a little while, and every version becomes more broken. I feel, I don't know about more broken, but definitely it just breaks in new ways. I don't know, use Nextcloud. Maybe I should test it. Maybe I'll build my own Nextcloud server so I can get some experience with it. I just don't use it enough, but maybe I will, and that would be cool. And then I could actually answer those questions better. I don't use Nextcloud enough to really be an authority on it. I feel like some people might be, but I've not really searched for people and their Nextcloud tutorials. What's the state of Homelabs for 2025? How does everyone run Docker containers in a VM environment? I mean, that answer for me is really simple. I have my VM where all my Docker containers live. So this is my Docker virtual machine that has tons of other Docker things in it. So whenever I'm running something on Docker, they all live here. I do have Portainer on it. I know some people, and I'm included in this, have a love-hate with Portainer. Portainer seems confusing on some things, but it can be a nice way to quickly look at something, like especially when you want to know what images are there or the containers and quickly jump to the logs of one of these. So I don't hate it, but it's definitely a little bit, I don't know. Some of the stuff's a little weird inside of it, but it works. What's your opinion on using Chia farming drives in a NAS? I don't understand the question. I don't do any Chia farming. Are you talking about like, are they worn out because they were doing Chia farming? I mean, Depends. The commercial drives definitely um, have general higher endurance than a consumer one. So I guess it kind of depends more on the drive than everything else. But I mean, if a drive's been hammered on for a while and is used, well, it's, the life is what it is. But drives generally seem to last a reasonably long time, but they do fail. That's why we put them in an NAS to have some level of resiliency against those failures. DPX is like TIFF, metadata VDEV. I tried, but does not solve the issue. Larger record size seems to mitigate the problem, but also does not solve it. I mean, then you'll need a faster system. At some point, it's the nature of things is you just have to buy a system to match what your demands are. I have a question about the fastest way to move data from an old data set to a new data set in the same pool. Rsync is probably, I'm assuming rsync. Now you can use ZFS replication inside of a pool. That's an option, but that's going to duplicate it, and maybe that's what you want. So ZFS replication is an option, but maybe you have only a certain synchronization you want to do. So you might want to do it with something like rsync, and that would be an option as well. 2404 to 2410 TrueNAS update. I personally have not had any issues myself updating the systems. I'm on the latest, with all of my systems, and all of them upgraded fine. So I haven't had any problems with it. Well, you have enough RAM, but you probably need faster drives. So at some point, it's not, you need either faster drives or see if there's a lot of CPU load. So is the CPU load high? If not, maybe you'll need faster drives as well. There's performance tuning is something you can only do to a certain extent, but a lot of it has to do with just the speed of the hardware. So you can throw a lot of RAM in there. Is it a newer system with faster RAM? Is it an older system? I do not use MQTT. We are slowly migrating away from Docker to Podman for security reasons. It's almost a drop-in replacement, supposedly more secure. I've seen people go back and forth about this, and I am not an expert on it, but just in general, one of the things that concerns me, and this is just the way Docker runs. So I've just not spent a lot of time in Docker and how to lock it down. But one of the things I can point out here, especially sitting here in Portainer, if I'm spinning up Portainer, and like right here's net data, right? I have net data as a Docker compose. I have this as a Docker compose. But Portainer has access to, as I spun up Portainer, it can now manage all of these. By default, and I'm not sure, the part where I'm less familiar is by default, the Docker images can talk to each other. I'm pretty sure, and someone who's more of an expert, please comment on this. I'm pretty sure there's ways to create restrictions so that can't happen. But I do find it interesting that Docker is very permissive, and I think Podman as well by default. And that's where I see the security problem. So Portainer and all these different tools, let's say I trust them. But what if I put an untrusted tool on here? Well, that untrusted tool has the ability to manipulate the other tools on here. For example, I can go here, I can remove this, I can stop it, but I didn't start the net data from Portainer, but Portainer has access to its logs. It can start the other services running. And that's kind of the default way that Docker works. The other applications, best I can tell, all have the ability to talk to each other or control each other to an extent, like Portainer, for example. I didn't implicitly say, hey, can Portainer check some boxes? You have permission to talk to all these things, but it does. So yeah, that's where I think more of the issue is with Docker when you run a bunch of things together. Dockage, they're in, yeah. Dockage also, Docker containers, you can plug in with Dockage. It works. It's similar to Portainer. Um, I use Portainer. I didn't really get much into Dockage. Dockage is novel, but it didn't make me. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I just thought Portainer gives me a few more options for managing networking and storage, but I don't really use. I don't use it very often unless I'm doing some troubleshooting. Most all the time, I'm doing Docker from the command line because that's where I feel I better manage it. I generally set up compose files. I set up. I prefer bind mounts over using the Docker storage to I forget which Docker volumes. So I just find it a little bit easier to know where my data is. And it makes it much more portable because I can just take the one directory and move it, and everything flows with it. So that's been my way to handle it. But people handle things in different ways. I don't really have a favorite access point, but I mean, I like UniFi. They work quite well. So I really haven't had a problem with them. I think there's some good prices on used Chia drives locally, but I know there's always a catch. I mean, it depends how wore out anything is. So, is a used car a good deal? It's kind of one of those. Well, what kind of used car? Was it a taxi cab and it's got 400,000 miles on it? That's a very used car. If you deploy Docker Compose on CLI other than Portainer, well, that's kind of what I'm saying. These were like net data, and this is Rustdesk. Rustdesk was Compose, and so is Nginx Proxy Manager. This is a Docker Compose, but I can stop Nginx Proxy Manager. I can inspect it. I can stats. I can open a shell inside of it to manipulate it and then execute a console. Like I have full control to do all these things, and I did not set up my Nginx Proxy Manager with the Portainer. So if you look at what do they call them, stacks? Like it does say it does have limited control, but it has enough control to be able to stop and start and delete it, or pop a shell into it. I do like that the compose files all go into one place. I will say that's a nice feature of Dockage for sure. So your Docker containers live within a location where Portainer can control. If you want your containers not to be communicating, you need to specify different networks for them in your comp. Oh, they have different networks. That's the thing. There are several networks in here. They're not all on one network. Nginx Proxy Manager has its own network, but it can still control it. So here's the Nginx Proxy Manager network, but Portainer still has control to open up a shell in it. Thoughts on recommendations on a procedure where you are updating TrueNAS that isn't being used as a storage volume for XCP-ng VMs? Is it shut down VMs first or just let XCP pause them on fail? Oh, that one's actually super easy. This is a feature of XCP-ng. Go over here to your storage, advanced, and just hit enable maintenance mode. And it will let you know if it's going to shut down any virtual machines. So that's enable maintenance mode, make your updates. I'm going to cancel that. And then disable maintenance mode. That's it. Yeah, there's not any direct migration path to move from Proxmox to XCP-ng. So it is going to be some manual effort on your part. All right. Your Portainer has access to Docker socket. That's how you manage anything that's running. So how do you, that's the answer I was looking for is, I guess, how do you set up protection on the Docker socket? Or can you? So I mean, I just haven't spent time digging into this personally. I'm just aware of it. This is also why things, and I'll pull up Graylog as an example in here. People have asked why I run Graylog as its own separate thing, even though it's also running Docker. But the answer to that's kind of simple. I want Graylog to be somewhat of a source of truth if I'm having problems, because everything collects logs here. I don't want any risk of other containers talking or having any problems with it. So it is a dedicated VM that does run Docker, but it's only running a single thing inside of Docker. So nothing else is with it per se. But yeah, I guess, I'd have to better understand that particular feature. Like, how do you manage the security on those? So I don't know that answer. Why is this thing being difficult? Trying to shut off my Windows system, but it does that sometimes. I left OBS running on the other system, and I went to turn it off, and Windows goes, "Nah, we're gonna break this. We're gonna break your shutdown process. We're done. It's broke." Oh, because Windows is stuck doing some update because Windows. OBS has crashed. Yeah, we know. Welcome to Windows world of something crashing. There we go. Sorry, I was distracted by a Windows crash. Is there an ETA and a new XCP-ng interface? This year, I imagine. There's not exactly an ETA. Docker runs as Docker. So when if you were to look at the service that's running at it, I believe it runs as Docker. Maybe that's a test I'll have to do, is see, does Podman do restrictions on the socket where they're all running? Okay, so only available on host machine if you don't map it in a composer, or when you start from CLI, yeah, it runs as root. Okay. Trying to convince leadership to look at XCP-ng as we rebuilt VMware. If I could convince them to have a call with you, ballpark for an hour consult, prices on our website. But I'll tell you verbally what they are, but this is a static point in time, so prices are always subject to change. If you want to talk to one of our general technicians on stuff, it's like $225 an hour, I think, is the base rate. But if you want to talk to me specifically, it's $350 an hour is my rate. When I have to move VMs between hypervisors, I use Clonezilla. Also, Portainer can control things because Docker file for it specifically mounts the Docker socket into the container. So I guess that's where the question really comes in, is how do you manage the Docker socket? So there is a way to do this. It's just the way the default way Docker works is permissive, if you will. So it's not where you have to build permissions. Sounds like Docker by default allows all, and you have to then modify that default so the other Docker system, the other containers and things you're running in Docker can't talk to each other, which is interesting. Now, the problem that I believe people are trying to mitigate with something like Podman is, if you're not running Docker as root, if there's a Docker escape into the host environment, you have a whole mess of problems. And I believe that's what Podman is trying to eliminate, is that potential Docker escape. How would you back up a NAS OS to have the least amount of downtime on an OS drive failure? I would put dual boot drives in for my NAS. And that is what we do for mission critical systems. So if a system is mission critical, it will have a pair of boot drives. That is the best way to mitigate that. See, am I still okay? So I got some data moving over here. I'm migrating some VMs around in my lab today. Well, technically, this is the lab at work that I'm doing this for. What else needs to be moved? Look at the pool. Actually, I'm going to go here. We're going to rearrange the storage on this system. Ooh, there's a lot of disk to move still. Windows 11. I probably could just delete this one. I don't even think I need it. Maybe I will. I don't know. I'll hold on to it. I don't know how many of these I have. I've got more than one of these. So I guess I'll keep it and just move it. Migrate them. What I don't migrate, I'll just purge. I did a pass-through video when we were talking about we're going to do some testing at work for things. And this is where we lab stuff out. Oh, we need to go to the host. But I have in this particular system a bunch of NVMe drives. So we're going to, maybe I'll do a video on this because people love asking about virtualizing TrueNAS. And I'm going to virtualize TrueNAS and pass a bunch of NVMe drives. I think well, actually, I got to look. Maybe I did the video before. I can't remember if I did a virtual TrueNAS one or not. But either way, we're going to do some testing with it. And I completely missed this because I don't usually pass drives through, that you can pass them all through at once by, we're going to select all of them. So there's all the NVMe drives. And I can check the box if I want to pass them through. So click that box. It'll pass through all these drives and reboot the system. And then if you're virtualizing something like TrueNAS. Now, that's a terrible idea to do right now because I'm migrating data off those drives. So that would leave things in a very broken state. And I don't really want things in a very broken state. I mean, it's always fun to learn from when people accidentally put things in a broken state. But I don't like when they're in a broken state because I put them there. I should know better. So where's this drive live? Cool, that one's where it's supposed to be. What about the other ones? Pool. Yep, that one's where it's supposed to be. pfSense. This one's broken. I should just remove it because I know there's something wrong with it, and I will just rebuild. Easier to rebuild it later, I think. Or just do that. I'll migrate it. Maybe I'll fix it. There. Kick off all the migrations. Migrate all the things. Worst IT mistake you ever made? I don't know. That's always a tough one. Good news is I've not had any major catastrophes. I have, but it was my own, 100% my own servers. I did reboot a TrueNAS on accident. That was running production stuff at work. That happened. Another time I restored, I had two firewalls. I mixed up which one was which and restored the wrong config to the wrong firewall, shutting down my, it was completely shut down at work. So not any customer one. Customer stuff, I'm just so overly cautious and careful on. So it leads to a very boring storytelling time. Hey, Lawrence, love your channel. I have unraid NAS, but I never want to create a separate cold backup. Can you recommend which OS for cold backup server? I don't know much about how Unraid does backups. My preference is for TrueNAS, and with TrueNAS, I back up to another TrueNAS. That's how I do all of my backups. I might do a video on that as a topic of just doing backups. It's not, people overthink it a lot, but it's about figuring out where your data is. And I put my data in a spreadsheet. Then I have a list of where the data gets copied to and what the frequency of that copy is. So a little bit of planning goes a long ways. And then the planning is not specific to what software you're using. It's just making sure you have a list of understanding your assets, where your data is, then making a process and figuring out what that process is called, where that process runs, and how to validate that process. So, I copy data from this particular system to that particular system. I'm using this tool to do it, and this is how I validate that, and then put a date in a spreadsheet for the last time you validated it, because nobody cares about backups that work. Everybody cares about restores that work, because untested backups are just wishful thinking. Yes. So largest IT mistake: allow a customer to have global admin without a co-managed agreement. Yeah. Does UniFi offer layer 3 capabilities and switches? Will they do inter-VLAN routing at the line rate and take offload off the firewall? Some models do. I think their enterprise ones have that ability. They're still new to that. There's going to be a lot of updates that come in the 9.1 or 9.2 version around that. It's still early days for UniFi and layer 3 routing. Now using Docker and starting to wonder what's the use in multiple VMs. I have 3 VMs all running Docker containers. Realize all the containers could be in a single VM. Security is one of your biggest reasons for it, as I mentioned in my example of Graylog. Keeping very clear separation between things is important. As we kind of mentioned earlier, there's ways you could lock things out so other things can't talk to the Docker socket and create better privilege separation. But the reality is, one of the problems you have is you are one Docker update away from having your system taken over, because supply chain attacks are a real thing. Docker is really popular. And I've very, very much hammered on this with people because they've constantly found bad Docker images in the Docker repository, and they show up faster than security teams can pull them down. And if you are trusting, and many people are, for example, UniFi that we've been talking about here, UniFi has no official Docker container. It is maintained by third parties. So you are putting your faith in random third-party person who maintains it. And it may be a completely helpful individual in the community. It may also be someone who will be helpful until they're not. And this is a real challenge, because if you don't know who's building the Docker image, you don't know the company behind it, there's a really strong trust problem you're going to have if someone poisons it, so to speak. Someone says, you know what, I want to throw a backdoor in this. I've built the trust. I've got 6 million installs. Here we are. Let's go ahead and change things up a bit. That is a real fear people have, because it's a real valid problem. Matter of fact, it happens not just in Docker. But it happens in I've done a whole talk on it, but let's get more specific to like this right here. People making code extensions and embedding things in there, and 9 million installs and full of security risks. I don't recommend using USB network interfaces for anything. They are always buggy. Having pfSense and UniFi in the same network, valid use case, or will lead to trouble? You can use them both. I don't know why you'd want 2 firewalls, but you can. You can double NAT things. To jumbo frame or not to? No is the answer. I'll just stop right there. The problem with jumbo frames is they are very helpful in the olden days of processors on the CPU not being able to handle high volumes of traffic. So jumbo frames is a way to solve that problem. Well, the problem got solved years ago with faster networking interfaces. And I don't mean faster 10 gig as in the link speed, faster as in the chips that process that 10 gig on that network interface card. And jumbo frames were a way to, they couldn't chunk that data that fast now. So you just put more data in the chunk. But jumbo frames, they're not necessary anymore. Biggest supply chain hack is either the guy who stuck the exploit in the Linux kernel or the exploding pagers. Yeah, it's the same problem. Meraki's come with over 9,000 MTU configured. I know. I could plug my Meraki. I have wait. I don't think that's true. I mean, I think they are capable of doing that, but I don't think they have that by default. I don't have a Meraki handy. At first, I thought it said MikroTik, but I see it's Meraki. I just don't think Meraki sets 9,000 MTU by default. Matter of fact, I've had so many people that screwed things up by doing that because they don't realize you have to set that in other places as well. Work is switching from Synology to TrueNAS. 45 Dry said there should be a way to repurchase Synology as a replication target for TrueNAS, but didn't know how. I'm not aware of any way how. So Synology works, if you're using Synology software, it's using ButterFS, not ZFS. So there's not any way for you to use ZFS replication, but you can use rsync. So rsync is a common language spoken by many NASs. So if your NAS speaks rsync, you can find another NAS that speaks rsync and you can't get the data. This makes more sense to me. I mean, I can't imagine anything coming with an MTU 9000 by default. I mean, it's supported on a lot of different hardware, but default, nothing I've ever unboxed. I've seen that. Yep. So I see people confirming rsync. Yeah, rsync is it's a very popular protocol, been around for a long time, and that's because it's effective at doing exactly that, and it bridges the gap between varied devices, if you will. So you Google it. Default value is 9578. I'm curious, as someone who doesn't do a lot of Meraki, so let me all right, so let's read through the documentation together. Why not? Let's RTFM together here on a Saturday. Let's see. The maximum transfer using the payload allowed in Ethernet frame Meraki MS series is Jumbo frames 9578. The default MTU value for all switches network, you can configure custom switches in the network MTU value for individual switches. Switch not have it set. It will use it all. Okay, I see what they're doing there. So the default VLAN, if I'm reading this, I'm not a Meraki expert, so someone who is confirm this with me. The default VLAN 1 has it turned on by default. But because all your devices are only going to be pushing 1500, it's a way to encapsulate everything. So I get it. I guess that makes sense. That way, if you're using it, the switch already can handle bigger packets. Because if you send a smaller MTU, it works. But if you have a switch set to 1500 and you send 1501, you're starting to lose pieces of data. So you're saying, and I kind of get it. It's basically saying the switch will by default pass up to the transmit unit of 9578. So, okay, that's interesting. Didn't know Meraki. So it's not that it's yeah. It makes it backwards compatible. That would be the way to do it. So it's not exactly a setting. It's just like, if you have large MTU out of the box, we already have that turned on versus many other switches. It's a checkbox to change the default 1500. Yeah, because if you're, here's probably what I should do. This might be a more interesting video. Maybe I'll just do a video breaking down and helping people understand what MTU is. So that might be the more interesting one, because then I will also show the differences in performance that you can get on different MTU sizes. Because one of the things do I have it pulled up here somewhere? Maybe. Yeah. I don't have, because this was a fun argument. I guess it's an argument. I don't know. We'll call it an argument, because I've seen people talk about this a lot. They're insistent there's no way to get 10 gig without without MTUs of the jumbo frame. Whoops. But these systems are talking now. Right now, there's data transferring between them. This is actually the system in the background running that is moving the data. But even while moving data, I'm still able to get 8.91 gigs. It was a little bit more. I think I can scroll back up. Yeah, it was up here at 9.41. So but you don't have, and this is not using jumbo frames. Even without jumbo frames, you can get 10 gigs between devices. I've seen people debate like there's no possible way for this to happen. I'm like, well, I mean, if we roll the clock back to 10, 15 years ago with an old network card, you had been correct. Old network cards were not capable of handling that type of data. Modern network cards made in the last like 7 or 8 years, maybe even older, can do it. I don't know how old of a network card I got to go before the problem is. So it did exist years ago. It's just not really the issue today. Only time I heard of MTU was a Lawrence System video on WireGuard, something about needing it being less than 1500 per fragmentation. Yes, that is correct. When you're setting up WireGuard, it needs to have the transmission unit be smaller to encapsulate within the ISP's default MTU of 1500 efficiently. Let's make a poem about MTU. Perhaps I'll do that later. I've only seen jumbo frames useful for Ceph storage, but I agree 10 gig can be achieved without it. Yeah, and I like the phrase, is the juice worth the squeeze? Does it really bring any more performance? I don't think so. I don't know. Now, does it make a performance difference at 100 gig? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know for sure. A cheap 2.5 gig switch for the Homelab. UniFi makes some cheap ones. Meraki makes not Meraki. MikroTik, we were talking about Meraki earlier. MikroTik makes some inexpensive ones. And I've talked about the little off-brand ones that are not managed. So it kind of depends on how cheap is cheap and how do you need managed interfaces and you need VLANs or not. So if you don't need those things, there are those. Serve the Home has covered a few of them. I don't know how to call them. They're these weird, oddly branded 2.5 gig switches that some of them even have 10 gig ports. They're like $50, so they're unmanaged. I wouldn't buy the managed ones because the management interface is terrible on them. But UniFi makes a lot of good 2.5 gig switches. MikroTik has a higher learning curve, but they definitely makes plenty of switches that have 2.5 gig that I think are reasonably priced. I've always called it MTU, and I mean, I've called it MTU since the dial-up days when we used to have to play with tuning MTU to try to see how much we can get out of our 28.8 modems. So I mean, in theory, yes, but it's such an insignificant amount of the processing power needed in modern compute. Like that amount of processing isn't what it used to be. Like it was a big deal when compute was slow, but over the years, compute's become so fast, it's not as common. Yeah, Serve the Home has a bunch of different switch models on there. Have you ever tested Grandstream switches? No, I don't. I know Willie Howe likes them, but I don't know anyone else besides Willie Howe ever talking about them. I don't know if they're cost effective at all. I don't know. That's I've not used them. Do they even have pricing? Go to their product page. It's a terrible product page. Where do you buy these things? So I guess we Google search for it. Is it through resellers? Yeah. So you know what? I really like Ubiquiti's direct sale model because it's easy to figure out. I'm going to say Grandstream is making this like I have to search for it. I mean, I found it here on CDW. Does Grandstream sell stuff on Amazon? They do, but I don't see their switches. Maybe I'm not looking. Maybe I'm not Googling hard enough. Okay, yeah, they appear to be on Amazon. So that's cool. And thanks for infecting me with XCP-ng. I haven't felt this good since a while. Awesome. Jason's Labs playing with some as well. Cool. They're channel partner only. Okay. Yeah. Hate that. Call a quote and then you can talk to a salesperson. Yeah. So I guess the question is with Grandstream, like this is 24 port gigabit layer 2 plus managed switch. I don't know. I'd have to like look at their pricing and do they have a nice management interface? I don't know. Like it switches. Some of these people might overthink it, but what's the compelling offer on it? What makes it a better than what's out there? It's just the questions asked. Not that I'm saying it's not. It's just one of those things. Yeah, I did a video where we have a client using the Ubiquiti door access stuff. They love it. The client thinks it's just amazing. If you look up the enterprise video I did on UniFi, they're super happy with it. Curious, does a router handle variants in MTU? Yes, it does. Question: how do you demonstrate your Homelab skills? And what you learned on LinkedIn? A personal blog is probably one of the best ways to do it. Just talk about and document and detail out all the projects you're doing. Who sent me a project today? I thought was pretty cool. This person. I'll share the link because they shared it with me, and this is make sure this is not a private link at all. I don't think it is. Nope. Share this tab instead. So someone sent, someone I kind of know sent this out to me. I think I met him. I don't always know where I met people from. So, but yeah, this is just them hacking away on some Jet KVM. I know a lot of people, especially security researchers, they document when they do like hack the box and stuff like that. Absolutely. These are the best way. So when someone's looking at your resume, they can go, oh, look, this person has a blog. Click. Oh, wow, they do cool things. And they document the cool things they do. We hired a few people recently, and one of the impressive things is how detailed their blog is about the projects they've worked on. It made it easy to talk to them because we know they do these things. They are very well written articles, if you will, of technical details, which obviously leans to us when we hired them going, wow, this person clearly knows their stuff, assuming they wrote all this technical documentation, which they did, but it definitely makes the conversation easier when people are looking to hire someone. Homelab. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. I don't know if that's necessarily true. What are you using for documentation? Wiki, notes, etc. for your Homelab work? I use a tool called LogSeek. And I probably should at some point do a video about LogSeek. I've been using it for a while. But LogSeek is been my go-to for a long time. This is where all my notes are for whatever it is that I'm working on. Let me see if I can. I think I can play with the demo on here. Do they have a demo? Download live demo. There we go. It's a little bit confusing to get started with because you're not always sure how you're creating the pages. So that will, build me a test page real quick. Click on the test page. Let's start throwing some stuff in there. What can I throw in there that might be interesting? Actually, here we'll make instead of test page, we'll do this. I don't think make sure there's no passwords in here or anything. Not passwords, but like stuff I don't want in there. Let's do this. All right, there we go. Can I do a select all? Yes, I can. So copy. There we go. And this is some of the notes I have for setting up stuff on there. It's setting stuff up in there. So you can, this is a demographic. They won't be saved. Yeah. That's fine. But as I do things or you create notes for this, that, or the other, / later, I should do something. Then now that sets later, but then I can also set it to do. This needs to be done. Then I can also set another to do. Check out XCP-ng notes. There you go. So you can cross-reference and reference things. I know knowledge management tools are very full of opinions and from the people that use them. But yeah, I'm not big. So things like I'm not big on closed source ones. I care about open source because I care about my privacy. And one of the things about LogSeek is it's open source. It's you in control for better or worse. I say for better or worse because some people lose documents all the time and don't back them up. And this expects you to have some back end knowledge. So as pretty as it is from the front end, and yes, it does have dark mode when you're not. I think I can switch the demo to dark mode. Everything has to be. There we go. Way better looking. But you do have to manage all the data yourself. So that is sometimes a non-starter for people. But yeah, because it's open source and it's free, that's one of the reasons I like it. I don't trust the other companies not to do rug pulls on me. It's free now, but it's not later. Oh, we made an update that suddenly snoops all your data and sends it to someone because this VC firm that backs us now said that's how we got to monetize the investment they put into us. Yeah, LogSeek as an Obsidian replacement this week, there's definitely big differences in them. I've never used Obsidian, so I can't do that direct comparison. The current network engineering job relies on experience from my work in my lab. Before that, aviation was I trade. Yeah, having a lab where you do all this, there's a reason I have labs. The labs are how we, put together ideas that we end up doing for customers. It's definitely it helps you greatly to be able to do that. Make this a little bigger. You can put code blocks in here too. So there's all kinds of code block, bash, and then if I wanted to put some code in here, there you go. You can start building whatever it is you need to build inside of here. And it puts it all together. And you can also move these blocks around. You can put things underneath it. You can indent these so they belong to this. So you can actually put a code block in and then make it a to-do. Fix my garbage code. Whoops. Spelled properly. There you go. I got a to-do to fix my garbage code. It shows how you can embed things and everything else. I live by doing this. You can also create tags inside of here. My main log seek is definitely huge for that. Can you put in files? You can reference files. It's backend. Everything on logseek is just flat markdown files. They are working on a database driven version because the market is pushing them that way. I do like one of the comments on their latest release. I see you as a heretic creating a database in a world of markdown text files. You can reference files, but you don't really, it does have the way to like embedded images. I don't really use that feature, but it's a thing you can do. Yeah, maybe I'll talk about how I use logseek and build one out. There is so much stuff in here. My problem is I can't share mine. It's just way filled with private data. Not that it's not passwords or anything like that. It's just like customer notes and things like that. To-do lists for customers, business things I'm working on, contract deals. It is a lot. Wonder if I can share. Hold on. Maybe my content board. Oh, there's a lot on here. No, there's stuff in here that's. I can only share a screenshot of this. But man, all my video stuff is I plan out all my videos and everything in here. Another for building out a logseek server video. Yeah. I don't like I can put it together because what I'll do is I'll start from scratch. That way people aren't looking. I can go over by redacting or blurring out things that I can't share with my own to show what it looks like fully built out. But definitely could be one of those things. Might be fun to do. Okay, it doesn't do that in a demo. See, it's kind of neat to see all the linking to all the pages you create and everything else. How to take dummy notes. So many notes. Anyways, fun to play with. And it's not a web interface, by the way. It's an application. Now, before you get excited about it, and this will be in the beginning of the video for sure, the phone app sucks. I don't use the phone app at all. And if that is the non-starter for you because you prefer to use your phone, I don't like using my phone at all personally. I use my phone for communication. I don't take notes on it. I know that's probably going to be not what other people want to hear, but that's definitely a thing that may be enough to make you go, okay, so the phone app isn't great. I'm not using it. I'm fine with that. I like to put the qualifiers at the beginning. Don't watch this video any further than here, like the very beginning, because the phone app's not great. Does it have one? Yes. Does it sync well? No. Maybe in the future, but will I use it on my phone? Not really. And I have a couple of reasons for that. And it's partly because of the privacy thing. The phone wanders around and is easy to wander off with. And yes, I keep it locked. Yes, it's got many digits and ways to unlock it via those digits, but I just don't know. I don't like all my notes and private details being synced on the phone. Maybe I'm weird. I don't know. It comes down to your risk tolerance. How do you feel about having all of your stuff on the phone? So yeah, I just, and personally, if people meet me out in public, you don't frequently find me on my phone unless I'm like navigating for maps, or I have Slack on my phone because we use Slack for work and I'm messaging people. So there's that. But yeah, that's rant over on Tom not liking phones much. Tom doesn't like phones. Tom doesn't like. Tom likes going offline occasionally. That's the answer. That's the real answer to privacy. Just go offline sometimes. Still moving some data over here. 4 minutes to go. What else needs to be moved? There is this Windows Server Lab. I don't know what it's doing. We'll just stop it. I'll migrate it. There, kicked off another migration. Risk tolerance is like eating pufferfish. Yes, I do not eat pufferfish. That is not on my risk tolerance list. Slack tracks you more than Facebook. Well, that's not true. I'm not saying Slack doesn't track you to some extent, but I would not say more than Facebook. I mean, Facebook is pretty much like the granddaddy, if you will, of the big one out there when it comes to tracking you. For example, find me on Slack. It doesn't have public user profiles, so send me a DM on Slack. It's not that easy unless you're part of it. So I'm not saying they don't have tracking, but I use Slack. Well, we've decided Slack is what we're using for work, and it works. It ain't broke. Well, I can't say ain't broke, don't fix it, because it broke Friday for several hours. I like laptops because I like typing with a keyboard. I don't like typing on a screen. That's actually a problem I have with a phone. It's not I don't know. I find myself more aggravated when it comes to voice to text. It's getting better, but then it seems to just regress to saying things and not making sense. Why is email such a taboo for self-hosting? Currently paying with POSIX and carrying DKM on it. Seems to work okay. The problem with it, and where the problem is first, inbound spam. I know there's a decent amount of spam that comes in if you have a mail server you're hosting. There's a issue. There's plenty of spam house links and things like that to work around it. But the taboo part, I tried to send you an email and it won't go through. Yep. The spam filters on Gmail and the spam companies that you put in front of like your Microsoft 365 frequently decide that everything that isn't coming from a select few, if you will, is spam. Matter of fact, for a while there, and I'm trying to remember they were talking about this on the 2.5 Admins podcast, I think last year, Microsoft decided for, I think 6 months, that if you had a mail server in Linode, you were a spammer. Hence, if you hosted a mail server there, you could not email Microsoft. And if you're doing business, that's a problem, because a lot of businesses you'll interact with have Office 365. So those are the problems. It's not even necessarily like a you problem. It's more of the way the spam filtering works. It's hard to find. What you have to end up doing sometimes is using a mail relay service, and that's kind of a workaround for it. So that's really why it's taboo, because if you have to start paying for a mail relay service, you're like, well, crap, the mail relay service is X dollars per month, and now I'm spending money instead of self-hosting, so I may as well have just left it at the company out there that's doing it. Because like I know Proton's becoming rather popular. And what are they charging now for pricing? Yeah, they're Mail Plus, where you can have 10 email addresses, 1 user, 15 gigs of storage. I believe you can do your own domain. Priority customer. Yeah, support for 1 custom email domain, $4 a month. It's not that I'm saying it's taboo, but for $4 a month, it's not. Mail is a rather inexpensive thing to host right now. I don't have any fiber channel storage, so I have no opinion on that. I don't see many fiber channel storages often anymore. Not saying they're not out there. I just haven't run into many of them. Usually when I see it, for example, we did have a customer that had it. It was ancient, and they just, when we were looking at buying new stuff, it wasn't really on the price list to buy new fiber channel. We sold them a new TrueNAS server. Yeah, Mattermost, and if another cool Slack replacement is, it's been a long time since I've actually used it, but I know people ask about it, and I'll give them a shout out because it's a neat project. Is Rocket Chat. I believe they have an open source version as well. So their starter one that you can deploy, and I think you download this. Yeah, you run it yourself. But Rocket Chat's been around for a while. The challenge, and a little bit easier if you're a business where you can prescribe what everyone uses, but one of the challenges, even for myself with Slack, I'm in the Slack channels of several businesses that use it. So if I were to, for my own company, not use Slack, I would still have to have Slack to communicate with 3 or 4 other companies that I have to be in their Slack. I'm lucky that I don't have to use Teams. So that's at least a bright side of my day, as I never have to look at Teams, and Teams seems pretty universally hated. So any insights to setting up a quick VoIP server for Homelab? I think, and it's been a while since I played with any VoIP servers because I don't even use a VoIP server anymore. But free PBX used to be the go-to. I don't know if it still is, maybe. So I don't have many insights because it's been years. I shut down running my own phone server 4 years ago now and kind of just stopped. I just didn't need it anymore. I do everything like video conference calls now for calls, and I have a cell phone. So the couple phone calls I get, if I, for some reason, need to use it, you know how few phone calls, I can't show it because it would show people's numbers of people. But so I talked to my friend on Friday. One of the employees called me on Thursday. My friend Roger on Tuesday. And then my wife called me on Monday. There's all the calls I got for all of last week. So that's 1, 2, 3 phone calls in an entire week. No one calls me, and I'm okay with this. TrueNAS, 60 terabyte SAS disk, 256 DR5, direct attached storage, XCP-ng over 10 gigs. How many VMs should I be running? Mr. Tool. I don't it all depends. There's not a way to tell you how many to be running because some VMs don't use much data at all. And this is where the challenge comes in. So if we look at, we'll pull up like this. If we look at the stats here, this VM's barely using anything. Look at this. It's using kilobits. Even Graylog that I have running over here somewhere. Let me find it. So Graylog, and we go here to the disk. Same thing. It's using a little more because it's doing logging, but it's using kilobits. But if I had a server that was running logs for like 1,000 different servers, well, then your answer is 1. You can run 1. So that's the calculation you got to do, is figure out what are the VMs you're running, what is the demand and the workloads they have, and how much data do they need. That's what drives the answer, because it's not like a count. You can put 200 VMs and easily run them if they're not using a lot of bandwidth or a lot of disk activity. For some reason, you're trying to use Teams for storing files and shares at work. Well, I wish you luck with whatever comes from that silliness. Should I run Proxmox and TrueNAS on top of that to start with? I'm looking turning an old Windows 10 PC into another NAS server like that to use a digital library or archiving system for digital assets. I mean, yeah, it's always fun converting old systems to repurpose with things like that for learning. So I would say I encourage it. So it's my little science experiment I had the other day with the video I did, Where did that little thing? I have a picture of it somewhere. This thing. Like, I still tinker with stuff because it's fun. So I did a video on this just the other day. Definitely fun. But I realized I've been going for an hour and a half. It is nice outside. So it's not that nice. It's nice enough that I want to go outside and go for a walk. So that's my next plan. Thank you all for hanging out with me for the last hour and a half. If I have time, I'll do this tomorrow. I don't know if I will or not. That's why I knew I had time today. So that is where it started, is here. Maybe if I got time tomorrow evening, I'll pop in for another live stream, because I've been doing some morning ones. Maybe I'll switch it up and do an evening one. Hit me up at homelab@lawrencesystems.com, or my forums.lawrencesystems.com. That's a great way to engage with me on all kinds of fun topics. I definitely enjoy many of you that have joined the forums. It's been amazing. I will throw this out here before you join. I'm sorry. You cannot join my forums with anonymous email addresses. I've had too many spammers do it. That seems to anger people that I'm not respecting their privacy, but until someone figures out a way to solve the privacy problem and the spam problem, and I'm open to suggestions, email them to homelab@lawrencesystems.com, because my solution has been to stop the anonymized email spammers who keep coming into the forums. It makes it a better place. No one wants to go to forums with their spam, and I do my best to keep the forums very much on topic. So great to see any of you that want to join there, and thanks.